Now I present to you our keynote speaker, Rebekah Bastian. Rebekah Bastian is a writer, artist, tech executive, mentor, wife, mother, and air acrobat. She has held leadership roles including Vice President of Product and Vice President of Community and Culture at Zillow. She is also the CEO and co-founder of OwnTrail and has just published her first book, Blaze Your Own Trail, in February 2020. Rebekah serves on the board of directors of Bellwether Housing and advisory board of University of Washington School of Mechanical Engineering. She is also an advisor to technology startups, a respected thought leader, and a community partner. She has been recognized in the Puget Sound Business Journal 40 Under 40 and EMAN 33 People Changing the Real Estate Industry and the Female Founders Alliance Champion Awards. We're excited about this opportunity to hear directly from her. Just a quick note to our attendees, please post your questions in the Q&A box instead of the chat and upvote the questions you would like to see answered. Off to you, Rebekah.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me okay?
You sound great.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for some slides here. And, oh, no. There we go. Oh, you have me disabled for screen sharing. Can you turn that on?
Yes, go ahead now.
Okay, perfect. And sorry, this is the technical difficulty of, there we go. Great, and present. There we go. Look good? Thumbs up? Can you see the screen okay? Okay, here we go. The virtual conference is getting a little bit smoother every time. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be talking here with women in data science, and I've loved seeing all the people sharing where they're calling in from. It's really cool. I think that's one silver lining, is being able to have women from all over being able to join today instead of just in Seattle. So it's wonderful. I am going to talk a little bit about what my career journey has been, share some of that with you, and then kind of get into how that led to writing the book that just came out and how that led to starting the company that I just started, OwnTrail. And then I kind of tried to pull together a little bit of a framework in terms of, you know, things that might be relevant or helpful for everybody here, and hopefully have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end as well. And feel free to ask questions as they come up as well. So I wanted to start off with sharing a little bit about my career path as others might see it. So this is kind of, if you look at my LinkedIn or kind of research a little bit about the milestones in my career, it might look like this. It might look very linear and kind of up and to the right in terms of different promotions and opportunities and things I've taken on, a little bit of lateral moves, but it looks very clean. And the reason for that is that when we look in arrears at what we've done and we kind of create a narrative around it, it does kind of give that impression that it's this very kind of linear, lateral kind of a progression. And when we look around and see all those kind of end results shared, that's the impression we get. But what about this one? This is kind of probably a little bit more indicative of what my career path actually looks like. And you can see it's not so linear. There's been a lot of things that have happened throughout my career that were maybe in parallel or unplanned or up and down and all around. And if we go even deeper, it doesn't even take into account a lot of the failures I've experienced, which I will tell you have been plenty. You know, one example here being when I first went to school for music and failed out before finally, you know, eventually moving to Seattle with an ex-boyfriend and starting at community college and then getting onto kind of an engineering track from there. It also doesn't take into account my personal life, which, you know, I think a lot for women especially, our personal and professional lives are so inherently intertwined that just looking at kind of a career ladder without the personal piece is really misleading as well. You know, the whole reason that I got into product leadership after a mechanical engineering degree was not because I was passionate about that. In fact, I'd never heard of the role program manager that I took on, but I wanted to move back to Seattle to be with my boyfriend, who's my husband now. So that one worked out better than the first move for a boy. And, you know, becoming a mother was a crucial part of my life that's really impacted me professionally and all aspects of me. The different friendships, the different kind of ups and downs in personal life all have impacted my career as well. And it also doesn't take into account all of the what ifs, which is something that I'm a little bit obsessed with, is thinking through kind of the, what would have happened had I stayed in the Bay Area, or had I, not made a certain relationship with different people that have impacted my career, or, all the different what ifs. What if I didn't leave Microsoft because I hated the commute and ended up at Zillow as one of the first employees there, which has been hugely impactful career-wise. But there's all these different little decisions we make that impact us along the way. And anyone who says that it's all planned out and it's all worked according to plan, I think is tricking you. And so, as I've been able to talk with so many women, then there's really this theme that's come out that I want to share, which is that there is no one right path. I've had a lot of conversations with different women, different people all over, but, really focused on kind of the women's experience here. And there is this theme where we think that we're supposed to know where we're going and how we're going to get there, and that there's some kind of linear path or ladder we're supposed to be climbing to get there in our careers and in our lives. And in reality, our career paths and our lives can look much more like jungle gyms than ladders. And I feel like that doesn't really get talked about quite enough. And it's a really important thing to embrace, because a lot of the coolest things that can happen in our lives are from taking big swings, or, climbing across the jungle gym, or even going down to get up. And it's much less clean and predictable, but it can be much more exciting and fulfilling. And so really it's all of those different conversations I've had, and different, really wanting to share the message of there not being a right path, that led me to writing a book that came out in February this year. And so the book, it's called Blaze Your Own Trail, and it's exploring the different pathways and decisions that women take through their personal and professional lives in the format of this kind of choose your own adventure style book. So that means that you, the reader, are the person who's going through it. And at the end of each chapter, you make a decision, and that tells you what chapter to go to next. And through that format, it's really trying to embrace the fact that we can't always predict the outcomes of our decisions. Nothing's going to go exactly as you expected, but we can be okay through all of it. Each of the 19 different endings in the book, I call happily ever after. And it's kind of tongue in cheek, because none of them are actually fairy tale kind of endings, but we find our happiness and we find our ability to be okay and be strong through the unexpected pieces and the bumps in our paths. And so I think that really, through experientially, learning that, hopefully we can walk away with a little bit more confidence around the different ways our life can go. And I weave a lot of data into the book too. And I do that because there's all these experiences that we go through in our lives that can feel really isolating, that we can feel like we're the only ones going through it. And the reason is because it doesn't get talked about as much. So there's all these shared experiences that different women are having. And because they're kind of more taboo, some of them are not shared as readily, we start to think we're the only ones experiencing it. So I weave data into the book with really trying to create a sense of solidarity around those shared experiences in our lives. So what happened is I wrote this book, and, doing my job that I loved at Zillow, I had actually, when I wrote this book, recently taken on a really different role. I'd been in product leadership and was VP of product up until a couple of years ago. And then I shifted over to create a new organization within the company called Community and Culture that was really focused on equitable opportunities and a sense of belonging for our employees, and then leveraging that energy to create social impact through the products we build and the business decisions we make. So basically, it was my dream job that I had created, and then I've gone and left it now to do an even dreamier dream job at this point. But what happened is I wrote the book, and I was kind of, I'd signed on with the publisher and was waiting for the book to come out. So I started playing around with what a book launch platform might look like, and just kind of thinking through, it could be fun to have women share different trails that they've blazed. The different paths in the book are obviously a small subset of the infinite paths that we can take through our lives as women. And as I started playing around with that, I started really connecting the dots on some really important problems to solve, and started to have some big ideas for how we might solve those. So the problems really are the fact that we do worry about our paths through life. We worry about where we're going and how we're going to get there and what the journey looks like. And our personal and professional lives are so inherently intertwined. But then we look around and we see these kind of picture perfect social media or traditional media end results, cleanly compartmentalized into like, this is your personal life, this is your professional life. And I think it really kind of sells our experience short in terms of what our journeys really look like. And we want that authentic sharing into what the journey is. We also want to be able to see people who look like us in the places that we aspire to. And of course, look like us can be the different identities we hold or the different experiences we've had. But what happens when we don't have access to that is that we can lack the confidence to go after certain things in our lives. And we can even lack the imagination of what we could be going after because we don't see those people that we identify with in those places. So, on a personal note, myself, I think it's actually because I've been spending a lot of time over the past several years being an advisor to different female-founded startups in Seattle and being really, getting really close with that kind of women entrepreneurial community here, that gave me the courage to leave a really comfortable corporate job in order to go start my own company. And it's being able to, have access to those women and say, well, yes, they're amazing. And they're not like a totally different breed of human than I am. Like, if they can do this, I could do it too. And I really think it's an example of, needing to see those people that you identify with in order to feel that confidence. So all of those problems kind of on one side of the equation. And then on the flip side is the fact that we want to be able to give back to those coming up behind us. But all of the kind of traditional ways of doing that can be very time consuming and not at all scalable. So kind of a quick poll here, and feel free to answer in the chat if you would like to. But how many of you have found everything you need in a single mentor? Obviously, this is a little bit of a loaded question and fits in with my agenda here. But the reason I ask that is because I think oftentimes we don't. Traditional one-on-one mentorship can be really powerful, but it can also be really limited. And we know that 75% of women wish they were getting more mentorship, and 79% of women wish they were giving more mentorship. And the reason that traditional mentorship isn't reaching everybody is because it is so time consuming. And it is because we don't always have access to those people who look like us or who share our same identities and that we want to be giving or getting mentorship from or to. And we might be afraid to ask, or we might not get asked. And so, and even kind of in the best case scenario where you do find that perfect mentoring relationship, I inherently believe that we don't find everything we need from a single person. There's going to be so many people in our lives that can give us the inspiration and the guidance and the direction that we need, depending on what it is that we're navigating at the time or where we're trying to go. So basically, all of those problems are really what drove us to start OwnTrail. And what we're doing with OwnTrail is basically letting women create what we call these micro acts of mentorship, which are sharing their trails through life as a series of interconnected milestones. And each milestone is normalized by a category. And so what we've launched just a couple of months ago this is just a screenshot from yesterday from our site, owntrail.com, but it's basically, you can just browse one by one through these different trails that women have shared. And you can click through and see details of each of the milestones they've shared and tell them when you appreciate their trail. But it's very basic. But what we're looking at building with this is basically this whole neural network of life paths. So as we get more data here and we're able to see the different kind of intersections of shared experiences, and we build this out, then it starts to solve some really interesting problems in, like, for example, maybe I want to be able to say, this is something I aspire to in my life. What are all the different ways that women have gotten to this point in their lives, and maybe filter that down to the women who share my same identities or my same experiences, and start to really visualize that there is no one right path, and start to see what my own path there might look like. Or say maybe I'm trying to navigate something right now, like a really hard decision or just something really difficult I'm going through. What are all the different ways that women have gotten to this point in their lives and from this point, and then start to really drill down and get specific, advice or get my questions answered or get guidance from women who have been there. And it's this very kind of scalable model, though, where like every question that gets answered or every trail that gets shared is going to reach all the different women that can use it, instead of just having these same conversations over and over, because we are all going through a lot of the same things, and we do have a lot of the same questions, and we do need a lot of that same inspiration. And so that's what we're building. And we really have this goal of being able to allow women to give and get the mentorship that they want in a really scalable and impactful way. So really reframing what mentorship means in this kind of many-to-many model. And, you know, using the collective power of our stories to lift each other up and really provide that inspiration and guidance through the shared experiences that we have. And this is one that I think hopefully a lot of you get excited about, because I certainly have. It's the data that we're going to be able to get about women's lives. So one thing that I noticed when writing my book and, you know, doing a lot of research to weave data into that is the fact that there is a huge lack of data about women's lives that's out there. So the research is really limited, especially if you want to get into things like intersectional data. So like, what do women experience through their lives based on the different identities that they hold? Like, it's basically just not there. There's some sparse data. There's, you know, a couple surveys that get run each year and stuff, but it's pretty void. So what we're excited about here too is that, you know, while we can build something that's really powerful and inspirational on the individual level, you know, use the data kind of to create personalized and guided experiences, we'll also get this aggregate data that can help hopefully fill some of the gaps around what we know about women's lives. And as we get that, then that has this ripple effect of, you know, when you understand data better, then you can start making more informed decisions. So like, how might all of the different companies and governments and people making decisions that need to understand women's lives better use that data? So that is all really exciting for us and what we're building. And I wanted to just kind of step back now a little bit. So this is kind of some of the path I've taken and what I'm working on right now. And there's obviously this theme in there that there is no one right path. But I also recognize the need for some kind of framework to help us navigate, because like, yes, that's all fine and good to say there's no one right path, but like, you still have to make a decision. You still have to move forward. So how might you approach that without being too constrained or narrow in what your options are? So a few things that have worked for me that I wanted to share with this group. One being a series of 3 questions that I really encourage people to ask themselves and then kind of triangulate that answer to give you direction of where you could be going. So the questions are really looking at, what are you passionate about? So what are the things that give you energy, get you excited, right? Then what are you good at? And so that's not necessarily just like what degree you have or what's on your resume, but like, what are your transferable skills? Like what can you bring to any problem to help solve it, right? You know, so you might be great at data analysis. You might be great at bringing people together and motivating them. You might be great at communicating or strategic, creative problem solving. All those things are like kind of what you're good at. And then look at where you're needed. And sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes you can read a job description and say, I'm needed here, and that sounds like a great job, and I'm going to apply to it. And sometimes there's problems that need to be solved that no one's asking you to solve yet, or that aren't written out in a job description yet, or, you know, and so then it's really kind of looking at what is the problem space where you could be solving problems, and how might you interject yourself there. And I think when we answer those 3 questions of our passions, our skills, and the opportunities where we're needed, then, and use kind of the triangulation of those answers to help us set a direction for where we might be going, we can go in some really cool directions. And they're not necessarily the directions that we might have mapped out on a vision board last year, or that we, you know, necessarily knew when we were starting out in our careers or anything like that. But I think it's a good way to kind of find those opportunities. The other kind of framework that I'm a big fan of, because it's worked out very well in my life, has been the side hustle. So this is basically, and a lot of things I've taken on, I didn't do for the, you know, because I thought it was going to lead to a change, but just because I was passionate about it. So, you know, for example, in the kind of early Zillow days, a few years in, the iPhone came out. And I thought it was really cool. And I started working on the side with a few developers, and we built Zillow's first iPhone app, just totally as a side project. And it ended up really taking off. And, you know, turns out real estate was a very inherently mobile scenario. And, you know, now I think 2/3 of the traffic is on mobile. And so we ended up forming a team around that. And I ended up being the first product leader for our mobile team. And that was after a year of just doing it on the side because it was interesting. Or, you know, when I switched from VP of product to VP of community and culture at Zillow, that came from about 3 or 4 years of doing work on the side, really focused on, you know, how do we get more diversity into our tech org? How do we solve social issues through the products that we've built? and how do we keep, you know, what's been a really great organic culture alive intentionally as we really grow and scale as a company. So those were all things I was doing on the side for many years because I cared about them. And then when I had this kind of epiphany that my side projects were the things that were most exciting to me, I was able to really make the case for creating a team around it, and was able to get that supported and build a really great team with it. And so that was really a side hustle. And then also, you know, writing the book, obviously, but then starting a company. Like, I actually didn't set out to start a company or to leave my job, but after working on OwnTrail on the side for quite a while and realizing that there was really kind of a there and wanting to run with it, then I'd already kind of started to build out the team and the vision and the product for that when I decided it was time to really go full time on it. So I'm a big believer in the side hustle, both because it can convince yourself that this is something you want to be doing. It can convince others that it's something that you can do, right? And that you can be successful at. And it can create opportunities without having to take a complete blind leap just right from the beginning. And so it's kind of, now, of course, the downside being that it takes more time to be doing a full-time job and something on the side. And, you know, in my case also, you know, raising a couple of kids and doing all the other things that life requires. But it's worked out well for me, partially because, you know, what I just said, and partially because the side hustles that I pick are things that I'm passionate about, that I'm excited about. And I find that when I'm filling my life with things that are very exciting to me, it doesn't drain me. It actually is something that is kind of feeding me more. And so that's how I've been able to kind of balance those things. The last framework I wanted to mention is one, and you can tell, side note, this is a girl who's making her own PowerPoints for the first time in many years. So, but I did want to mention kind of the balancing act. We as women have many balancing acts, but this one is really between being reactionary and being stagnant in our careers. And, you know, I think on one side of things, like if something really disappointing or frustrating happens in our careers, or, you know, or something really shiny and exciting is going on over there, then there can be a tendency to be really reactionary and say, okay, screw it, I'm just leaving, you know, which sometimes might end up being the right thing, but it's hard to know because sometimes when we're driven by kind of reactionary emotions, it might not be that well thought out. At the same time, you don't want to stay in a bad situation or an uninspiring situation, or, you know, a place where you feel stagnant for too long. Of course, if it's like a dangerous bad situation, whether it be work or relationships or anything, like that's when you want to get out faster. But I've kind of used this framework in my career where when I'm most disappointed, because I have had plenty of disappointments in my career and in my life, you know, and again, you can look at all the yeses that have happened in my career by looking at kind of the LinkedIn profile, but there's a lot of no's in there also. So what happens when I feel the most disappointed or frustrated is I'll put a date on my calendar that's like 6 months from right now, like literally what is 6 months from now, put it on my calendar and say, if I still feel this way, then I'm going to make a change. And what that's done for me is it's, you know, generally speaking, I've gotten to the 6 month point and things are totally different and I don't feel the same way. And so, but it gives me that kind of optionality without being reactionary. And what ended up happening here after I finally left Zillow after 15 years is kind of like the ideal state, which is I wasn't running away from anything, I was running towards something. And to the extent that we can set ourselves up for those kinds of transitions in life, it's a really optimal kind of way to be. So I find that trying to find that balancing act can be one way of setting ourselves up for that. All right, so that was the kind of different frameworks I wanted to share. And with the rest of this, I think we have a few minutes left. I wanted to leave you with just kind of these parting words based on, you know, things I'm passionate about, things I'm working on, and things I've been learning here. One is just, you've got this, you know, it's really that confidence in knowing that there is no one right path and you're going to be okay. And I think just taking that breath and knowing, we're okay, we've got this. You know, it's something I'm telling myself like 5 times a day right now as I'm trying to homeschool my kids while running a company, but still, we've got it. And also that you're not alone. Like these experiences we have, and especially some of the more isolating or scary or confusing ones, are ones that we're all sharing. And so I think that really by owning our stories and sharing them with each other, then we can both create solidarity for ourselves and for others. And that's really what's going to keep us going and lift us up. And then lastly, just that like all of us can be helpful to each other. You know, you're never too early in your career. You're never too, you know, you're never in a place in your life where your story isn't valuable to someone else. And so really helping kind of take those collective stories that we all have and building that bridge from both inspiring each other to creating a sense of action in our lives is something that we can all be part of. And so with that, I just wanted to, have a few minutes for questions if anybody has any. I'll, in a moment here, I'll stop screen sharing, and I'm sure we'll send out this info also. But, I would love for all of you to share your trails on owntrail.com and check out the ones there. I can be reached on all the different social platforms, and OwnTrail's on there as well. So I'd love to stay connected with everybody and be part of this journey together. And I think in order to see the questions now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can pop over and see if there's any questions coming in the Q&A. And I see a few here. Okay, I'm going to just start from the beginning. The first question's here. Thank you, Anu, for saying you love the book. And you asked about how did you have the guts to reveal yourself to this depth? You're right. It is the creative sharing is a little bit scary. I think the first time I ever read my book out loud was during the book launch that we had in Seattle. And it was a terrifying experience putting it out there. I think one thing that helps is that the stories in the book, some of them are mine and some are not. And nobody knows which are which. Obviously there's so many different paths and endings that are mutually exclusive. So it can't all be me. A lot of it comes from stories I've heard from different friends and people that have, shared their experiences with me. And so it's almost kind of hiding behind a fictional plotline, even though so much of it is extremely personal to me. But it was really fun to write. And that's the thing about the creative process. You put yourself out there and it's scary, but then it's so fulfilling. You keep coming back to it. So, okay. Sam says, how do you personally balance being a mentor, finding mentorship in others, and all of the other things that you encounter as an entrepreneur? So, and I think in terms of the mentorship piece of it, this is really kind of why I'm so passionate about what we're building with OwnTrail is that I can't say yes to every single coffee that I get asked to do. And I would like to, and I do try to. I time block my calendar to meet several different people a week. And I find those meetings to be, as if not more beneficial to me than it probably is to anyone that wants to meet with me, just because, there's so much inspiration that comes from that, but it doesn't scale. And I do end up sharing a lot of the same stories and experiences, to different people. And that's why I feel like there is this opportunity to really kind of scale the impact that we can give and get by kind of creating this data-driven, self-guided kind of mentorship platform. And then balancing that with everything else, like I said, I really try to fill my life with as many things that I feel passionate about as I can. And that's what gives me the energy. That being said, we all have different capacities, and we have different capacities at different points in our lives. And it's being, paying attention to, is this giving me energy or is this taking energy away from me? And then adjusting based on that so that you're not, going negative on the energy that you have. And let's see. Sneha, I hope I'm saying that right. It says, what are some books that you read to guide you through your journey? Ooh, gosh, there have been a lot of books that were inspiring to me. Largely, inspiration as a writer. I find that reading a lot of different books is really helpful in terms of kind of finding your own voice and your own writing style. I haven't done a ton of self-help type books as a guide, but I do love to read story, fiction or nonfiction stories that kind of give me insights into the lives that other people have experienced, because I think, the more that we can really understand and have appreciation for all the different perspectives and cultures and backgrounds and experiences that other people go through, then that's really valuable in terms of, trying, especially as a product person who wants to build things that are the most inclusive and reach the most people. That's been important. So that's kind of a rambling answer. I would be happy. Let me kind of make a list of some books that I've loved, and I'll share those out with this group afterwards.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Rebekah.
Yeah.
Let's take one last question.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't sure. And I can send notes, or anyone's welcome to shoot me a note on any social platforms to talk more as well. Okay. For last one. Okay, I'm going to take this one that I think is probably relevant to a lot of people. Thank you for saying the book is inspiring, Simran. And you ask what advice you have for someone graduating this year and entering the workforce. you know, this year is different than a lot of years because everything is kind of shut down and virtual right now, which is really interesting, right? And so I want to touch on that because I think it feels scary for a lot of people. I mean, it feels scary if you're already in the workforce too, but I think that we have a kind of a permission slip right now to take chances and to not get it all right, even more so than ever. Like, I'm definitely feeling that as an entrepreneur. Like, I'm going to do everything in my power to succeed with OwnTrail. And I feel like there's a little bit of, you know, a little bit of forgiveness in terms of things not going exactly as planned right now because it's such an unprecedented time. And I think that applies to everyone who's starting out in their careers or making changes in their careers or in their lives. You know, we're in an interesting period. And so instead of being held back by fear there, I would encourage you to take some big risks, try things, put yourself out there. You know, I think one thing, especially for someone starting out in your career, and something that I've experienced throughout my career, is really finding my voice and kind of the initial fear of speaking up, and how I've kind of gotten myself through that fear and learned how to advocate for myself and speak up. And I actually think that this climate where all our meetings are virtual and all of our conversations are virtual gives a little bit more of an opportunity to put yourself out there and find your voice and ask for what you want and share what you've done. And so I would encourage you to take this time to take some chances and build up some of that muscle memory around how you speak up for yourself. And it's going to be okay. It's going to be weird, but we're going to get through it and it's going to be all right. So I'll leave it on that note. And again, I welcome anybody to reach out, and happy to answer questions that I can. And thank you so much for having me here. I hope it looks like an amazing program today. So I'm going to stick around and watch quite a bit of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebekah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebekah, for such an inspiring talk. Big round of applause on behalf of all the audience. And congrats on your book. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I'm amazed how your talk applies to our community. I guess I shouldn't be. Every single one of us has faced it. Now it's time to address it.